I'm Ward Anderson. I'll be hosting this panel, and of course, we are talking about Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason lives. So, yeah, absolutely, do it. Writer-director Tom McLoughlin, everybody. Thom Mathews, everybody. And Jason Voorhees himself, CJ Graham, come on.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, guys, thanks for being here. And I was telling this Tom last night, I watched Part 6 again, just to kind of catch up. And it is, and not just because I'm sitting here hosting this panel, I asked to host this panel because it is of the Friday the 13th movies, besides maybe the original, it is my favorite. Absolutely is my favorite. And I know that's something that you're all kind of used to hearing. So let's start on that note, right? What is it like to have made the Friday the 13th movie that I think, you know, we hear it's one of the few that critics like. You know, it's one that still holds up. That was the thing I noticed about it last night, is that it still holds up. But when you were making this, did you think that was going to happen, or did you think you were making a Friday the 13th movie?
Well, Tom was making it, but to his credit, he made such a great script, because there was actually a story there. It was a middle, there was a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we had characters that we could actually root for. And I think this is probably one of the first times that, you know, people were rooting for Tommy Jarvis, and you just didn't see somebody and didn't care about him. You actually got emotionally invested in them. So kudos to Tom for making such a great script, and the way it looked too, and the music, and it just unbelievable.
And Tom, how did that come about? How did you wind up with this project?
Luck. I'd written and directed a low-budget horror movie called One Dark Night, and Frank Mancuso, who was running all the Friday the 13th, saw it, and they were upset at Paramount because Part 5, the fans were not happy that it wasn't Jason at the end of it. And as far as they were concerned, he was killed in Part 4. Now we got to bring back Jason. So I had one marching order: bring back Jason. And I said, well, I'd like to put some humor in it. You mean make fun of him? No. Just want the characters to be likable. And they go, okay, that's fine. So they literally let me run with the ball on it. So everything in there, you know, were things I wanted to do, and, you know, executed the best I could with a low budget and things. And we had obviously a great team of people that really, I mean, it was like a family. You know, if any of you see the Camp Crystal Lake Memories, the documentary, you know, you see our group was like the family group. You know, nobody has one negative thing to say about anybody. It was just a great experience. And no, we had no idea here almost 35 years later that this thing would still hold up and still be talked about.
And CJ, what was it like, you know, being asked to play, because by that point, Jason Voorhees was iconic, right? It wasn't like stepping into a character for the first time and going, maybe this will lead to something, maybe this is, what was it like being given that role and hearing about it, hearing you were going to be doing it?
You know, at first, you know, Tom will attest, and you may or may not know, there was a selection process. I was the second decision. And the stuntman that actually picked the part up, when the first dailies come back, you know, Tom wasn't satisfied with the projection of the physicality of the individual. So, you know, the next day I get a call that, hey, you're back in action. And Monday morning, Tuesday morning, they had me down in Georgia. So I always give credit to that person for not being able to deliver so that I could come in and deliver. And I mean that respectfully, because he's went on to have very successful producing, directing, stunt career. But for me, it was just a windfall of pure luck. Getting to work with, you know, Thom Mathews, I mean, iconic from the beginning. Work with Tom, who made that unnormal decision to take somebody who isn't a full-blown stuntman and never done a film and say, that's the physical structure, and I'm betting the money on the physical structure. So for me, just to turn around and do it, and then here we are 35 years later, and I get to sit next to them, and they become friends over the year, and look at us as fans. I mean, you know, very, very humbly appreciative.
But you still won't sleep with me.
No, you know, I'm not going to cheat on my wife.
Okay.
I told you that the first time.
Now, one of the things I noticed when I was watching.
Now, Thom Mathews, I might think about you.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I didn't.
There's some sparks here.
Just don't tell Carla.
This is unrequited tension, I think. One of the things I noticed when I was watching the movie again was the scares are there, the thrills are there, and yet it's not a gory movie. It's not a gratuitously gory film. One of the criticisms lobbed at Part 5, other than the fact Jason Voorhees isn't in it, is that it's a raunchy film in the series, right? And I didn't realize, until looking back at it, there's no nudity and there's not a lot of gore, but so effective nonetheless. Was that your intention, or was that a studio thing? Did they say we need you to stay away from too much blood and boobs?
No, not at all. I mean, because we had like 9 different screenings for the ratings board, because they, as far as they were concerned, we still had gone too far.
Yeah.
But none of the kills were actually cut out. They were just kind of trimmed down. So, I mean, I had a moment where one of the cops' head gets squished, and literally you saw the skull crack open and a piece of brain come up. All you get now is crack, and then cut off of it. So there was some things that were taken away that would have, added a little more edge to it. And I also thought it was funny. I mean, so I mean, I've got that dark sense of humor. But no, the studio basically said, make the movie you want to make. And that was it.
It's interesting looking back now on the Friday the 13th movies, and Part 6 especially, because each of them would come up against the ratings board. Each of them had to get cuts made to keep from getting an X rating at the time, what they did. And I watch each of them now and I go, you can do that on television now.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of that stuff you do on TV, on The Walking Dead every single week. And back then in cinemas, people were like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
And it just seems tame by comparison, doesn't it?
I know. I just recently saw The Joker. Have you guys seen The Joker? And I mean, everybody's like, you're going to be shocked. You're going to be, and I'm sitting there going, I see this on cable all the time. I mean, what's the deal? I mean, the thing that was great is his performance was very realistic, so it had another edge to it, which was great. But, I'm still a Heath Ledger man myself, but, to me, he was the definitive Joker. But he brought something different to that part, Joaquin, than what Heath Ledger did. So, I mean, it's your choice, which one you like the best. But the main thing is that, we're so tainted now by all this. I don't know what could be that over the top anymore.
And CJ, playing Jason Voorhees, I think if you ask anybody who's played the role, right, they'll tell you that people see it as a guy in a mask, stalking people, going at them. But this is actually a character, and it's a serious acting role, because there's a personality behind that guy that you've got to convey, but without facial expressions, without speaking. What was it like having to do that, and what did you do to really convey that menacing character?
Well, I'm a naturally mad individual to begin with, so that was part of the characteristic that was required. But people do say, well, you didn't say anything. Yeah, but what's the big deal? I mean, but if you think about it as an individual, if you want to show anger, frustration, whatever, I mean, you do things that people jump, right? And that's easy.
Let the record show everyone jumped.
The point is, that's power. I didn't have to say anything. I just hit the table and everybody in this room, including Tommy, and this thing broke. It popped right open, but that's what I'm trying to say. So it was something that was not necessarily taught, but Tom did a great job of conveying what he was looking for. He did not want a robot. He didn't want you to be totally dead. He wanted some human factor, but not too much. And Tom said it, Tom did not want me to make fun of Jason. He was looking for a menacing person that could walk into a room and command respect. And that's where Thom Mathews and I played off when we had our scenes, because there was a theme where everybody was rooting for Tommy Jarvis, to kick his ass. And it was kind of like that, tick and tap back and forth. And it worked out well. 35 years later, we're talking about it. And I mean, again, humbly appreciative to be here.
Mr. Mathews, what's it like playing Corey Feldman?
Did you want me to kill him, or did you want to kill him?
Well, I've never met Corey, so I could not play Corey. To answer your question.
But what I find interesting about the Tommy Jarvis character is, I think a lot of people I've found forget that Corey Feldman was young Tommy Jarvis. For a lot of people, Tommy Jarvis was just part 6, right? Was just you. Did you feel that you were stepping into a character that others had done, or did you look at it as?
I did, because it was already established. So when Tom cast me and I got the part, I went and did my research. I saw 1 through 5, and I got to 5, and I think I told you I was scared to death, because 5 was just, to me, it was like a porno. And then I come to find out the director was actually a porn director, which made sense to me. But every girl you saw in a t-shirt was going to get wet, and there was like a wet t-shirt contest.
Yeah.
And I was ready to walk out the door.
It's the raunchiest one, like I was
It
saying.
was pretty bad, and the lighting was bad, and there wasn't much of a story there. It was just terrible. So I was scared, and but it was a job, so I went through with it anyway. And thank God, we had a much better story, and the lighting was great, and the soundtrack was great.
Mm-hmm.
Tom put all his little nuances in the Karloff supermarket. And the Frankenstein with the lightning bolts, all those little tricks, because he's a big horror fan,
Well, speaking of horror, the part 6 does have a lot of homage to prior horror films. Tom, what's it like for you as an actor? You've appeared in several iconic horror films now. You know what I mean? Like Boris Karloff many years before. You're like the Bela Lugosi or Boris Karloff of 80s slasher films, right?
I've done 3 horror movies,
Yep.
I guess, and then Never Hike Alone, if you want to count that as the fan film, which has got a lot of response. But 2, I guess, Return of the Living Dead, and then Friday the 13th. And everyone always asks me, because Return came out a year before, we shot it a year before Friday the 13th was made, and they were always asking me, did you, getting the part in Return of the Living Dead have anything to do with you being in part 6? And I said, I don't know, I'm going to have to ask Tom. So I asked him yesterday, and he said, no, it had nothing to do with my involvement in Return of the Living Dead. So
I'm ashamed to say I hadn't seen the movie
I just
yet.
got lucky.
So you came in and you were great. So.
Thank you.
Very cool. What's it like now for you guys? I know that you each do conventions, not always together, but often apart, and everything like that. Do you still like doing the conventions as much as you do? Do you like all the travel that comes with it?
Shit, I hate it. You son of a bitches. Don't you ever call me again. I personally, I think we have a good time. I mean, everybody has careers and things they're doing. Both Toms are working all the time with projects, and Tom will tell you he's got a band, and we have families, got a couple teenagers. Mine are over 20. Yours are grown. But there's always something on the block. And for us, I'm enjoyable. I get a chance to see Thom Mathews or Tom McLoughlin or one of the other characters from Jason, some guy named Kane Hodder. Or I get to see someone, and we have fun. And the most important thing is I sit in front of the fans and look at every one of you like it's the first time and just have a good time with it. And you'll ask a question. One of your biggest questions, what's your favorite kill? I've answered that 1,000 times, but for you, it's the first time the question's been asked. I make sure that I give you the first time I've ever answered it, out of appreciation. So I love seeing the guys, we have fun.
What is your favorite kill?
My favorite kill is when I take the sheriff and bend him over backwards.
That's my favorite kill too, really?
Yeah.
Yep.
I've never,
Is it?
How about this?
that's my favorite kill.
Is there a Jason kill that you didn't do in one of the other movies that you particularly like?
There was another
film
besides part 6?
Part 7?
I gotta go watch these damn movies.
Jesus. There's something else?
I tell you what, why don't we let the audience ask some questions, okay?
I have a question.
Sir,
Sorry, and it's a good question. It's for Tom, actually. You.
CJ has a question for...
I forgot
yes,
the
sir,
question,
for Tom.
but let me think about it for a minute.
How can I help you?
Question is, when you were putting this film together, and did you intentionally think about bringing Jason back like a Frankenstein, or Alice Cooper, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, doing the music, the James Bond with the significance of James Bond, Jason having a Batman utility belt. I mean, that's when you think about it. And then at the end, Tommy walking away as being the only person that's ever survived a Jason haunting, so to speak. So it's 5 questions, basically.
5 questions. Alice Cooper, no, that was a wonderful surprise that happened when we were in editing and I was using some of Alice's music. And then the producer came to me and said, would you like him to do a song? And I go, that would be great. Is that possible? And he goes, yeah, he's really interested. So that kind of came in post,
cool.
and I didn't plan
Yeah, I
that.
didn't know this. Who do you too, right?
No.
Yeah.
I didn't think of a Batman utility belt.
That's what I call it.
But I did think of a belt, and it still to this day when I see the little figures and stuff and see that belt, and I go, I thought that up. I didn't know if anybody would buy it. You know, this whole idea suddenly he straps that on, but it's now become kind of iconic.
Wow.
You know, basically everything else was kind of planned to do the James Bond thing.
Don't ever say strap on again, please.
I keep telling him no.
That get you excited or what? All right, I'm sorry to use it.
Mr.
All right.
Matthews, was there ever talk of bringing Tommy Jarvis back again? Did you ever, go into discussions about going back to? I mean, you did the fan film, which, by the way, is available at his table, and I recommend you guys check out all 3 gentlemen. They're back to back to back, right over on the autograph wall. Go over there, check it out. They've got movies and posters and photos and all kinds of great stuff, including the fan film that we were talking about. But besides that, was there talk about bringing back Tommy Jarvis?
Not with any studios, there's always people who reach out to me. There was one idea that was kicking around, have Tommy Jarvis be like the fugitive, traveling as a detective or a cop. He's like going to different places to find these murders that have happened, these gruesome murders, thinking that he's still looking for Jason because he still thought he was out there. So that was more of an episodic kind of a thing. And there was some different ideas kicking around.
It just seems so interesting that there was this character besides Jason that's established for these 3 movies and then wasn't used again, right? I find it odd that he was never brought back.
It was odd to me. I think they should have followed that thinking, because I think his movie was the first one where the audience got hooked in emotionally and was rooting for a character for the first time. And they should have continued. What they ended up doing was whatever was the flavor of the year, whatever made the most studio picture that made the most money, whatever the gimmick was in space or psychic ability. I think that's what they ended up kind of doing, trying to get those dollars.
Yeah, and I think, and I could be wrong on this, but I think that there was the idea at first that, when I mentioned Corey Feldman, the idea that Tommy Jarvis was going to take over as the villain in the series going from part 5, and then they didn't end up doing that, but that was kind of alluded to at the end of part 4, the way the character's looking sinister, he's killed Jason, and they didn't go that route. And thankfully, I wouldn't have liked it as much, I don't think.
Right, I think it would have been just a continuation of Megan and Tommy getting older, having maybe some kids, and then Tommy being still, stressed out about Jason being alive and stuff like that. That would have been a natural continuation for me.
Yeah, I had started the script at one point, Megan and Tommy, and exactly that. The kids are now teenagers, and they've been hearing this hushed up thing about something that happened with mom and dad years ago, and the kids, basically, why don't we go check out that camp for ourselves? And then, of course, craziness ensues, and mom and dad have to come, save them. But I don't know if I could ever get Megan back. She just sort of went.
Well, we could be divorced. That happens all the time. Megan and I could get divorced. I could be a single father.
Yeah,
There you go.
true. But the best movie you were in recently that you weren't in was Vengeance. Have you guys seen Friday the 13th, Vengeance? You're waiting. Where's Thom Mathews? We get a picture.
Aw.
And again, I think.
But he's in the movie.
I think, I am, because he burns me at the end. I saw that. But I think just talking about the
CJ's
character
gonna
makes it
thumbs up.
even more like a legendary kind of a.
I know,
thing
he
without
is.
even showing up.
He is famous.
So I have a second question, because I get to listen to all this. In the old days, a lot of people come back and they say, hey, we're going to do a director's cut.
Yeah.
Now in the 80s, tape is different than digital today, which everything is saved on computers.
Yeah.
So all that tape that you edited and cut down and went to the floor, I assume,
Yeah,
that
it
those
was-
guts
it was
and blood.
actually filmed. Yeah, all those
It's all
little
gone?
horror moments
Yeah.
were trimmed out and put in a box, and that box exists somewhere. We don't know where.
That's a good question. So could there ever be a director's cut? Could you to put
can
back
find
in
the
that
We can find
gore?
those pieces, you know,
Yeah.
that we found a videotape actually of one of the cuts that have some of the stuff in, that's on one of the compilations. I don't know which one it is now, I've lost track. But the actual trims themselves, we haven't found yet.
Yeah, because I remember seeing in dailies when you come through in the opening sequence where Horshack or Ron Padillo gets his your fist goes through his chest and he comes out the other end with his heart.
beating.
And in dailies, he drops it. You drop it and it hits the ground. That
Yeah.
never made it into the.
And he steps
into
on
the
it.
film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like, Mom.
So it's interesting. I said it's a movie with not a lot of gore.
Yeah.
But it seems that wasn't intended. It originally had way more gore.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not over the top gore. I
Sure.
mean, it's not like a bloodbath, you know, of stuff.
Well, but it's like I said,
It's a little more edgy, yeah.
But it's like I said, it looks tame today.
Yeah.
Right? It was so shocking then, and now you see it on television, right? Like I said, why don't we open it up for questions? Anybody have questions for the guys? Sir.
Hi, this is a question for all three of you. Because the film has so much terror and suspense, how did the three of you come home each night and not let that come home with you and affect your personal lives?
Well, filmmaking is kind of like a puzzle, and you don't necessarily shoot it in order. So it's just a bunch of pieces. And you do it a couple of times at the minimum, maybe, and a lot of times at the very worst if you're not getting it. So it doesn't really stick with you. It's just going to work and doing a scene or 3 or 5 pages a day or something. It's not like that.
And I would say 90% of the film was shot at night, and Tom, as soon as the sun goes down, he's got you working until the sun comes up. So by the time you were released for the morning, you were sound asleep, so you didn't think about it, to be honest. And I said a little bit earlier, just like I said, I'm a little bit of a mad individual to begin with, so I worked right into everything I was doing. It was just natural.
Yeah, I lived it a little more when I was writing it, and I purposely wrote at the cemetery right next to Paramount. So then there's a thing on YouTube called Legends Never Die, Hollywood Forever. If you've looked that up on YouTube, you see the whole, how I wrote it there and what the influences were and so on. But yeah, when you're in it that way and you're having to think that way, it can get very dark. But the darkest was, for me, I was supposed to do a prequel to The Exorcist, and I was on that for 2 years, and somehow reading all these books on demons and possession and all that really messed me up for a long time. You know, so once that I walked away from that project because I didn't like the script, then I could feel this weight lifted off of me, because that was very strange stuff, and talking to Catholic priests about exorcism and stuff. This was a little more fun horror, like roller coaster ride kind of horror, so you didn't kind of hold it, to you as much.
I understand what he's saying, because when I did Return of the Living Dead, I was a punk rocker, and then I had a little pigtail, and it was so weird. I started becoming attracted to punk rock chicks on Melrose Avenue. It was just so bizarre. So you embody that character, so I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. You lived the part.
Yeah.
Tom, why were there no more Jason movies for you? Why was there no more Friday the 13th?
Well, funny you should ask. I actually have written a script called Jason Never Dies, and maybe some of you have heard the publicity on that. We're stuck because there's a lawsuit going on between Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller, which has been going on 9 years now and counting. And they just can't come to terms who is going to own the rights to it. And so until that is taken care of, there's no Jason movies going to be moving forward, other than what the fans have been doing, because they want it bad, and they're going to make it themselves and raise the money. So,
Do you think they both have an idea for the 13th? Because the next one's going to be the 13th one, Friday the 13th one, and maybe the last one, I don't know. but that's going to be a big deal. So do you think they both have a script or an idea what they want to do with that, and that's where they're holding out? Or?
According to New Line and Warner
What about-
Brothers, who I spoke with about my script, no, they don't want to look at anything. They
Yeah,
don't know how
yeah.
long this is going to go. But, you know, I'm basically doing a kind of a sequel to ours, because mine takes place 13 years after, so it's still in the 90s, like 1999. And it's, you know, kind of what happens beyond that. Because I thought, God, he went to hell, he went to outer space, he did. I got to go back to the, you know, the roots
Yeah.
again and do something different. And so that's, you know, that's sitting there waiting, hopefully going to happen at some point.
Jason goes to Narnia.
Yes, Jason goes to Narnia. That's-
Jason goes to CVS or something.
And he kills people with a really long receipt.
Yeah.
Strangles them with it. Now,
How did you guys get into horror? And the second question is, how did your kids react when they watched the movies that you guys went?
the question was, how did you guys get into horror, and what was the reaction from your kids to what you do?
Well, he paid me to do it, number one, so it's his fault. As far as the kids, you know, the two girls are 20 and 23 now, but when 10 years ago, they'd always say, don't let them know he played Jason because the boys won't come over. So, and my son, he's 24, he could care less. It's just like, he doesn't even talk about it, but someone go, hey, I heard your dad played Jason. Can you get me an autograph photo? And he's like, yeah. But he's not, it's like, whatever. What about your kids? They're 15 and what? The two younger
15,
ones.
17, and 20. Yeah, how I got into it. I just got lucky, and you know, just a young actor looking for a job, and I just Return of the Living Dead, and I was lucky to get part 6. So just a young actor looking for a job, and just happened to get lucky on both parts because they're both were great roles for me. As far as the kids, I didn't let them see them until they were in their teens, 12, 13 years old, because I didn't want them to have nightmares. And Return was a little risky anyway for them to see a lot of nudity and stuff from Linnea. So it was inappropriate for them to see it, as I have told many parents with young children who come up to my table, don't let them see it until they're 13. But a lot of them have. A lot of people had seen it when they're like 7 or 8 or 9. I said, let me guess, it was an older brother who made you see it, or your cousin made you see it, or the babysitter made you watch it or something. Yeah. So that was always fun. But mine, they didn't really have a, you know, you put it on, you see your dad on TV or whatever. It didn't really impress him. What impressed him, like it did with my parents, who told me not to get into acting.
Oh, yeah.
My dad, who was like from Texas, a redneck from Texas, wasn't impressed. He only became impressed when the guys he was working for had gone out and seen the movie and said something to him. That's when it made an impression on him. So, and my kids were kind of like the same way.
I think we entertainers have that story a lot. That you know, it's when other people told our parents how great that thing is we did, that they went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Tom? With horror?
I grew up with the Universal movie monsters. There was, we're in LA where I grew up, there was a series of movies that they would show. What did they call that thing? The 9 o'clock movie or the big movie or something. So they would run like Frankenstein 5 times a week. Bride of Frankenstein 5 times a week, 9 o'clock, you know, Wolfman, you know, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Mummy. So all this stuff just became a part of what I really, really loved. And then when I was 11, my mother had a mental breakdown, which was like, I didn't know how to deal with that, because suddenly the person that was your mother became somebody else. And then I suddenly dove myself into Edgar Allan Poe and all his, you know, poems and stuff. And that sort of dark side started to take off. And then the Beatles hit, and I went into rock and roll, and I went, okay, so much for horror, done with that. And after I got out of rock and roll and started making movies, all that started coming back again. So it's like it was all part of my childhood, and so important to me to try to, you know, express all that I felt, you know, as a
Percolating
kid.
down below, that's cool.
Yep.
In some ways, in most ways, I don't envy today's youth, or I do envy today's youth in so many ways, because like when it comes to these movies or the classic movies or whatever, you know, they can go find it on streaming sites. All the Friday the 13th right now are on Amazon Prime. You know, you can watch them, you can binge them, all of that. It's great, right? But at the same time, I don't envy them in the fact that there was an excitement when I was a kid that like when the local UHF station was like, for 5 nights, we're playing all 5 Planet of the Apes movies, right?
Yeah.
Like now you can just go get those or find them online or whatever. But that was a big deal. It was like, well, I know what I'm doing Monday through Friday of
You
this
look
week.
forward to it, yeah.
I'm
The
watching Planet of the
anticipation of
Apes,
it.
right?
Yeah.
And for a while, that was with Friday the 13th as well, you know, every October. And people still do it, you know, AMC I think does it or whatever, but it's not quite the same when it's readily available anytime you want, right, for streaming. And that was an event, and the Universal movies were like that too. There would be
that was the only time you're going to see them. Yeah.
the whole month of October. It would be okay. We're going to play all the Frankenstein or whatever. Questions, sir?
Hi, I have a question. I'm a private person. I'm a big fan of Brady. One of my favorite movies as a teenager I watched. In the script, like the part where they changed the name of the town of the lake from Crystal Lake to Forest Creek, is that Paramount's decision or your decision?
My decision. Yeah, I just felt logically, you know, are we going to go back to Crystal Lake where all these murders were? It's like, to me, the town folk met and said, you know what, we're going to change the name of this place so that we can reopen the camp, we can, you know, have normal lives again and get rid of this Jason character. So yeah, I figured it was a natural, logical thing to do. But for Jason, it's still Camp Crystal Lake, that's his turf. You know, and that was sort of the thing where Tommy's character, you know, the Tommy character was trying to convince them that no, he's coming back. And it's like, no, we changed the name. Nobody knows nothing about this place anymore. So yeah, that was my intention.
And I want to put a quick question up. Is Paramount planning to release a special edition of Friday the 13th Part 6 with special features or deleted scenes?
I think they already did. I think everything that, you know, all the interviews and what the videotape that we had that had some of the kills in them that were, you know, extended, that already happened. So I don't think there's, you know, the Blu-rays come out. I don't know how much more money they can milk out of another version for you guys to buy. I mean, I buy them too, so I go, God damn it, another one? All right, you know, and I've done commentary on 3 of them already.
You'd
and
be
it's like
surprised.
trying to figure out what else to say. You know?
They'll find a way to milk money, right? You'll be surprised. They'll be like, we've come up with a hologram microchip that you blink and you can watch all the movies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, the hologram would be worth seeing. That's
yeah. Going back to what we were saying about like iconic figures and everything like that, what would you like to see? Now, obviously, Tom, you'd like to see your script, but let's say that's not an option. Let's just say, what would you like to see them do? It's been 10 years even since the reboot of Friday the 13th, right? What would you like to see them do going forward with these characters? You know, let's say they bring Tommy Jarvis back and whatnot. What would you like to see happen next with Jason?
Yeah,
and Tom?
I think what I said earlier, for Megan and I to come, if she'll do it, or
Yeah.
as have kids, and that, for me, that would be, for my character, and for me, that would be a natural progression. And I think they should, like I was saying earlier, they should have done it in part 7, just to continue that there, and get CJ back in there too, because
Yeah, we might get Jennifer back because her kids finally saw her in the movie on
Really?
TV.
Is
Yeah,
that what it was?
yeah. It was like, Mom, come in here. You're on TV. And she like, walked in and it was like, uh-oh. You know, because that she was trying to keep it secret,
Oh.
you know, for the longest time. So I
Did she
don't know,
marry
maybe
the
she'll
T
change
guy?
her mind.
She married the T guy?
Yeah,
Celestial
celestial
Tea.
seasonings. Yeah.
CJ, do you what other if you couldn't play Jason, is there another iconic character you'd like to step into that you'd like to do?
Tommy
Horror-
Jarvis.
Tommy Jarvis.
You know, I mean, to me, I don't, you know, I look at it more objectively. I think the Jason series, if they would, you know, it's challenging when you have 2 parties, Mr. Cunningham and Mr. Miller, arguing, but I wish they could put together a script or 2 or 3 that have continuity. Use a similar Jason for all 3. Change out your directors and your scripts and, of course, your principals within reason. And then put the 3 together, put one out and shelve the other 2 ready so they've got more of a Harry Potter mentality. And they didn't do that back in the 80s. It was shoot one and we'll see what the next year's.
See how much money we're
Yeah, but now that you know, it's just sitting there waiting for the right person to come in and package it.
You got to understand, for Paramount or whoever owned the rights to it at the time, Friday the 13th, it was like the bastard child. Like, you know, they were embarrassed by it and they didn't want to do
They
it.
were.
It was a moneymaker though, so they kept doing it and they didn't really, you know, give it a lot of thought.
Yeah, we hid under the names of David Bowie albums. We shot Aladdin Sane. That was what it said on on the clapper, you know, and that's what people had to know in Georgia where we were shooting. And it's like, it really was like, yeah, we're making this movie, but we're not making this movie. So yeah, that's one of the things. They loved it, but they were embarrassed by it. And recently they tried to do a series, a Friday the 13th series with Jason and a series of murders. And there was like, I think 15 executives on there, and they just could not figure it out. They were all arguing with each other, and finally they just dropped the whole thing. So it's a tough one, but Paramount no longer owns it. It's now with Warner Brothers and New Line, and they're just waiting for this lawsuit.
Yeah, it's fascinating that it's surprising in many ways that Jason Voorhees and Friday the 13th has the legacy and the legend that it does. If you look at the fact that it's an inconsistent series,
Totally.
right? Far more than say Freddy Krueger, far more than Michael Myers, you know, these other iconic characters.
Sure.
It's an inconsistent series, right? Where Jason, his abilities change, his strength changes. You know, he's in space. He's in hell. He's all kinds of other people.
It's blowing up, and he's in the parts of a bunch of different people. Yeah.
It's actually amazing if you think about it that you were able to make.
I want to see the
movie
next one. I
work.
want to see Jason in the pens next time I think you're due.
Well, here's a good example. Everybody has got a hockey mask, hold it up. I see several different versions.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, this is the cool thing. Anybody can put a hockey mask on and take on the character. You don't have to be tall, big, short, whatever. Anybody can put that hockey mask and relate to it. You look at Freddy Krueger, it's a certain characteristic. You look at Leatherface, certain characteristic. But anybody who puts that mask on, they just kind of go, they become that character because it's so interpretable by the individual. And for those of you that have them, all three of those in front of me are different, you know? And so I think that's one of the things people embrace. You could take a picture of Tom Cruise and go to India and hold it up. Hey, Tom Cruise. You take a picture of C.J. Graham and hold it up. That's what they're going to say. Now, if you turn the picture around to a hockey mask, Jason. So that's how iconic it's become, unbeknownst to us.
Yeah.
You know, and when you talk about people, well, yeah, you know who's that? No.
It's true.
Jason, Friday the 13th? You don't know? Oh, yeah, the hockey mask guy. Yeah. Everybody knows the hockey mask. And for those of you that do cosplay and put that wardrobe on, you ever notice when you put the mask on, you go completely different space? You just become somebody. You know, you're always somebody, but you just all of a sudden take on this, I'm a badass. You know, I can kick some ass.
Well, and it's amazing, like I said, what a personality Jason has by not having a personality, right?
It's interpretable.
Yeah. What do you think of Uber Jason? CJ?
I ain't answering.
Let the record show CJ didn't want to answer
I'm going to take
that.
the Fifth Amendment on that. For those of you who know the amendment, that's I refuse to answer on the grounds it could incriminate Kane Hodder. Just kidding.
But you know what? You know, I talk about that inconsistency. Here's the other thing about it, though, boy. Friday the 13th, unlike a lot of other franchises, has a lot of great merchandise. You know, there's the fan films, and some of the fan films have won awards. Right?
Tom did one, Never Hike Alone, that, you know, it's gotten some rave reviews, and Tom and I, the other Tom and I, were in Vengeance, which was a little different. So, I mean, the fans are the ones that keep bringing these films out, waiting for the major productions to push it out. Games are huge. Kane Hodder's done Tom has done an amazing job on the game production as far as doing the games. I guarantee you, if they had even half the production they have today when Tom McLoughlin did it, I mean, there's a lot of merchandise out there today, but, you know, we've learned that from Star Wars, right? So just think what would happen on the next one if they pushed it out completely with retail. It could be massive.
And let me reiterate, the guys over at the autograph wall, they're also here tomorrow, correct? You guys are all here tomorrow as well? And they have lots of merchandise, some really great stuff. Posters and games and fan films and photos. Go over there and see them. It's the best deal of the con. You had a question, sir?
Yeah. One, what is a town that has a Friday the 13th camp, and what is the camp's name? That's my question.
From the original one or from ours? The one we have? It's a camp, it's called Camp Daniel Morgan, and it's in Georgia, and it's just outside of Covington, Georgia. And it still looks exactly the same. In fact, is somebody here that was at the camp thing I guess they're not here. But somebody just came up to me today and they did an overnight where you stayed at the actual camp and you saw the movie, there, and you slept in the cabins. Sounds like a very cool thing to do because it looks exactly the same.
Well, and I had told, I don't know if I told you guys, but I did tell you, Tom, that I grew up in Georgia, I grew up in Atlanta, and many of my friends are in Part 6. They're the kids, they're the campers.
Yeah.
And one of my closest friends growing up is one of the few kids that has several lines in the movie, a gentleman named Tommy Knoll, back then. And so I wanted to be in the movie, and my parents wouldn't let me go to it. But I was originally trying to get in to be one of the kids at the camp, and many of my friends were, because it was, I grew up in Georgia, right outside Atlanta.
Two little brothers under the bed.
Yeah.
That's there.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and they're both writers and directors now.
Yeah.
Those
No
two
kidding.
kids. Yeah.
I knew it would corrupt them. I knew it would corrupt them.
Do we have any more questions? Yes, sir.
How long did it take for makeup for Highway to Hell?
Highway to Hell took about 5 hours. I remember when MTV had just come out, and I'd be in the makeup chair at about 3 o'clock for a 7 o'clock call, and I would sit there because the prosthetics were about 7 different pieces: ears, nose, lips, and I would just sit there and kind of fall asleep watching MTV while they were doing my makeup. So that was a long process because everything was so granular, it was so detailed. Jason was short. It took 2 hours when we first started. There were some scenes, but once they put the mask on me, the whole front was pretty much cut out. They just blackened out my eyes. It became real simple to put the hood on and then attach it to my shoulder blade so it wouldn't move at all, or it would move a little bit with my neck, I should say. But once we got down to, it was a 45 hour, and I was on set. My call wasn't that bad. The first few shots, which, as Tom said, they're out of sequence like a puzzle. You didn't know where they were shooting, but they tried to get it out because of the cost factor with the prosthetics, but they were going to show the whole face like they did at the beginning.
I guess that's the advantage of playing Michael Myers, right? No time in the makeup chair. Just throw that mask on and go to work.
Highway to Hell, is there any extra stuff?
I don't know the answer because, we shot it in 90, like 2 years after Friday the 13th, and the company was called Hemdale, and they bankruptcy. At the time, distribution was for the film.
They did Return of the Living Dead.
Huh? They did? So they've done a lot of product, but that film was bankruptcy. It was ready to go out distribution. I mean, I've got the posters that they were going to send out to theaters, and the company Hemdale bankruptcy. So all their product kind of just sat dormant on the shelves in a library until I believe United Artists, MGM, bought it, and then a few years back they put it out. So they didn't have a screening, so we really never got to see, we saw our dailies, but everything shifted, what was good, what they would consider good film photography than what I would see. So I don't know the answer, but a lot of great people in it, just amazing. I mean, Ben Stiller, what does he make, 20 million a film? He's in it for 6-7 seconds maybe. Go figure.
We've got to let these guys get back to the table. We want you all to go over and meet them. They want to meet you guys, sign everything that they can. Give them a round of applause. Thom Mathews, Tom McLoughlin, CJ Graham. Thank you, gentlemen. Best of luck to you. Thanks, everybody.